Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to His Excellency Li Keqiang, Premier of the State Council of the People's Republic of China, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong, Prime Minister of Singapore, Mr. Teo Chee Hean, Singapore's Deputy Prime Minister and Coordinating Minister for National Security, Mr. M. Rajaram, Member of the ISEAS Board of Trustees, and Ms. Din Pei Ling, Chief Executive Officer of Business China. Premier Li Keqiang, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a very warm welcome to the 44th Singapore Lecture. To begin the proceedings, I have the pleasure to invite Deputy Prime Minister Mr. Teo Chee Hean to deliver his opening remarks. DPM, sir.
Your Excellency Li Keqiang, Premier of the State Council of the People's Republic of China, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong, Prime Minister of the Republic of Singapore, Mr. Rajaram, Member of the ISEAS Board of Trustees, Mr. Lee Shan, Chairman of Business China, Cabinet Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to the 44th Singapore Lecture. We are privileged to have His Excellency Li Keqiang, Premier of the State Council of the People's Republic of China, with us this morning. I would like to thank Premier Li for agreeing to deliver the Singapore Lecture during your official visit to Singapore. Premier Li's lecture comes at an important juncture in international relations and China's development. China has made remarkable progress since its reform and opening up 40 years ago. Domestically, China has lifted more than 800 million people out of poverty, more than any other country has done in history. Internationally, China has been the largest single contributor to world economic growth since the global financial crisis of 2008. And today, China is the largest trading partner of many key global and regional economies. Since 2014, it has been a net exporter of capital, with many Chinese companies venturing out, 走出去, to seek new markets and sources of growth. China is now working on its Belt and Road Initiative, which is an important vision aimed at promoting regional integration. All these have made China a major player on the world stage, with an influential role in global politics and development. China's rapid development has also come with challenges. While China's major global cities are as advanced as any in the world, many areas, especially in the interior, are still developing. China continues to grapple with many challenges such as income inequality, sustainable growth and environmental protection, and its market reforms remain a work in progress. Internationally, China has a leading role to play to help tackle global challenges such as climate change and advancing free trade and open markets. This is important, as China's growth trajectory can only be maintained if a rules-based multilateral order and international norms continue to be upheld. Against this backdrop, the increasing trade tensions between China and the US have drawn concerns. Sino-US relations continue to be the Asia-Pacific's defining relationship, and it is in everyone's interest that they remain positive and constructive. The escalating cycle of tariff measures by both sides could negatively impact the multilateral trading system and potentially impact broader relations. As a friend of both China and the US, we hope that both sides will work together to resolve their differences to the benefit of China, the US, and the rest of the world. Singapore and China enjoy long-standing friendship and close cooperation. In 1978, Mr. Deng Xiaoping visited Singapore just a month before China adopted the policy of reform and opening up. Premier Li's arrival in Singapore yesterday, on the 12th of November, was the exact same date that Mr. Deng arrived in Singapore 40 years ago. Mr. Deng's visit came 2 years after Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's first visit to China in 1976. That exchange of visits between Mr. Lee and Mr. Deng laid a strong foundation for our close bilateral cooperation through successive generations of leaders on both sides, anchored by regular high-level exchanges, robust economic cooperation, and strong people-to-people ties. Today, both countries work closely together in a wide range of institutional forums, in areas spanning trade and investment, finance, legal and judicial cooperation, human resource development, security and defense, social governance, sustainable development, and the Belt and Road Initiative. Singapore has been China's largest foreign investor since 2013, and China is Singapore's largest trading partner. Yesterday, we took another step forward in our relationship by substantially upgrading the China-Singapore Free Trade Agreement. We have also made good progress on our 3 government-to-government projects in Suzhou and Tianjin, as well as the Chongqing Connectivity Initiative, which was launched in Singapore 3 years ago by Prime Minister Lee and President Xi Jinping. Progress in the CCI's new international land-sea trade corridor has exceeded initial expectations. It connects the overland Silk Road economic belt with the 21st century maritime Silk Road, linking Western China to Southeast Asia and beyond. Singapore and China also work closely together in multilateral fora, including through the annual ASEAN Summit and related meetings, which Premier Li Keqiang has attended every year since 2013. Our distinguished speaker today, Premier Li Keqiang, requires little introduction. He was the youngest Chinese provincial governor when he was appointed governor of Henan province at the age of 43 in 1998. He subsequently served as governor of Liaoning province and executive vice premier. Premier Li has served as Premier of the State Council of the People's Republic of China since March 2013. As Premier, he has overseen many important economic and social policies, which have been key in sustaining China's strong economic momentum amidst growing global uncertainties. Premier Li has also been active on the international front, promoting China's relationships with other countries and regional groupings. This is most evident in the ASEAN context, where significant progress has been made in ASEAN-China cooperation. Premier Li's speech today is also particularly important, as 2018 marks the 15th anniversary of the ASEAN-China Strategic Partnership. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged today to have Premier Li Keqiang address us this morning. And it is now my pleasure to invite His Excellency Premier Li Keqiang to deliver the 44th Singapore Lecture on Pursuing Open and Integrated Development for Shared Prosperity. Premier Li Keqiang.
尊敬的一切合作，主持人、主办单位
Dear
的
host,
机构的负责人、女士们、先生们、
Institute leaders, Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, today it gives me great pleasure to attend Singapore lecture delivered by ISEA Yusof Ishaq. And I am glad to meet and exchange and communicate with people from all levels. It plays a positive role for the communication between us. Yesterday, the leaders in Singapore mentioned 40 years ago, Mr. Deng Xiaoping and Mr. Li Keqiang met here in Singapore. And in those times, China initiated the reform and opening up for 14 years. All levels and areas in Singapore has extensively participated in the reform and opening up policy of China. Here, on behalf of the Chinese government, I want to express the sincere gratitude for all the participation and engagement of Singapore people to the policy of China's reform and opening up. I remember 30 years ago, in 1985. That was my first visit to Singapore. Later, I was in Singapore as well. I felt it was a modernized country. It was a mature and developed country. This time, as the Premier of the State Council of China, this is my first visit to Singapore. From the airport to here, I have seen new architectures everywhere. There are factories, commerce facilities. As Li Xianlong told us, they are demolishing old architectures and building new ones. Singapore, as a nation with average income reaching the level of developed countries, it is still renewing and innovating. This is a country of vitality. We are pleased and proud of your achievements. This time I'm in Singapore. I am here for the progress of new cooperation in our relationship. And I am also here to participate East Asian Cooperation Leaders Conference. Singapore is an international metropolis. Here we have to look into the future and observe the international arena. As you all know, currently, the international economic and political situations are very complicated and profound. Uncertainties are mounting up. However, in retrospect of the past 17 years.
贫困在持续的减少，
Poverty is decreasing gradually.
得益于多边主义、自由贸
We are benefiting from free trade and multilateralism.
易，以此为规则的
We are benefiting
国际秩序。
from the international order
国际
of mutual accommodation. Currently, with the background of
多边主义的
changing international conditions, we need to stick to the policy of multilateralism.
坚持大小国
We need to adhere to
坚持
equality between big and small countries
来解决问题，坚持
and address issues through dialogue and negotiation.
和商来管控分歧。
Adhere to the approach of peaceful consultation.
国际社会向着持久和平、持
We
续
need to push forward the
减少
international
的方向
community for lasting peace and poverty alleviation.
赖以生存和发展基石。
This is the foundation of people's livelihood.
很重要，得益于
The development to today of mankind, we are majorly benefiting from free trade. Because of it,
使全球化的进步得以发展。
the process of globalization is developing rapidly.
自由贸易是新加坡贸
Free
易
trade
国的必须的环境。自由贸易
is a
也是中国
cornerstone and
推
must
动
have
开
step
放
for Singapore. Free trade is also China's step to advance
当然，
open,
大家都在讨论全球化进程当中
of course, people are
是不是出了
discussing
一些问
in
题？
the process of
自由
globalization.
贸易的规
Is
则
there any problems occurring?
需要不需要做调整？
Should we alter the regulation of free trade?
全球化总体
China
来说
needs
是适应人类发展前进的方向。
globalization on the general level is a direction suited to the human development. Because of globalization,
包容、非歧视
openness and
世
inclusiveness
界得以
are prospering in our world.
发展。也正是因为自由贸
And because of free trade,
易在相当程度上有效的避免战争，
it has effectively
而且使人们互
taken
动
a
有
win
发挥比较
and helped with mankind's connectivity
繁荣。
and realized common development and prosperity. Of course, there are voices saying that
公平，我多次说，
equality matters the most.
从来都是
I have
维护
reiterated that
和支持自由贸
China has always supported and safeguarded
易，应当
safe
有
free trade,
和公平贸易。
and we have adhered to the
自
policy
由
of
贸易是前提，
equality.
如果没有自由贸易，
But on the premises of free trade,
就等于没有贸易。那何谈？
we have no trade at all without it,
反过来，
and we have no fair
和公正的
trade
贸
without
易
free
是自由
trade.
贸易必要的条件，是使开
Vice versa, these two are the conditions for free trade.
重要的基础。所以我
It's
们
a
认为，
foundation and basis for sustainable development. Therefore, I assert
和自由贸易发
the
展，
problems occurring from globalization
我们应该站
and
在
conflicts
发展
occurring from free trade.
去看
We
待
should look from the aspect
推动一些
of
改革
development
措施，
and develop and advance some reform measures,
不能违背
However, we cannot go against multilateralism and free trade's basic rules.
我们愿意和各方共商如何推
We
进
would like to consult and advance together with all parties to the completion of free trade and the healthy development of globalization. We will also like to conduct fair and just trade.
更有强劲的动力，更高水平的
Injecting more vitality to free trade and higher velocity
我们
development.
不仅要在国际上
Of course,
发出积极的声音，
we will not only voice ourselves in the international community. At the same time, we need to face new
昨
challenges.
天
Yesterday,
的专机抵达新加坡机场，
the flight I took arrived in the Singapore airport.
有雷雨闪电，
There was thunder and lightning before it landed.
这个天气是平和，
But when it was landing, the weather was mild,
太阳的方向
and I could see the direction of the sun.
有云层，
Although there
所
were
以这就
clouds,
是我和我的同事们都感到。
therefore, that's a common feeling of me and my colleagues.
整个国际社会
No matter it is China or the international community,
遵循人类文明前进的方向，
we are chasing the direction of human civilization as long as we work together and join hands.
实践
We can take all the challenges
这
in
当
time.
然需要我们的邻居们，我们的
Of
地区
course, it requires our neighbors
做出实际。我此次来参加
to cooperate together.
东亚领导人系列峰会，
This time I am participating East Asia Cooperation Leaders Conference
和东盟
is to further
和
enhance
新加坡关系的发展。
China-Singapore relationships development,
我们在这个
especially
要去推进自由贸
we need to advance cooperation in this region,
易。现在
especially in free trade area.
我们之间不仅
Currently,
是
apart from ASEAN,
和其他一些国家，我们共同商讨了6年的
we have
RCEP，
been discussing for 6 years for
这
RCEP.
是一个覆盖世界1半人
It covers
推动
half
经济一体化。
of the country in the world, advancing economic integration. We have worked unremittingly towards this objective. For example, Singapore has been a strong
就
supporter.
在这个会上，我们要
This year,
宣布
on this summit, we are going to announce
要进入谈判的最
the
后，
completion
中方希望
of the negotiation and the final stage of the negotiation are to be finished.
结束谈判，能够启动
Next year, the negotiations will be fully concluded
协议的实质性，
and the agreement will be initiated
或者说
as in real terms.
因为它覆盖了世界1/3的以上贸易。在当
Because it
前
covers over 1/3 of the trades all over the world.
自由贸易遇到波折的情况下，地区国家
When free trade is meeting challenges and risks,
RCEP， 而这个协定是
countries need to
大
advance
规则，
this agreement.
是在
based on the general rules.
进一步的升级，更高水平的开放。那么，
it is a wider opening on the basis of the rules.
也会向世界发出一个
It benefits the region
我们维护
as well as
自由贸易，而且要
signaling the protection of free trade.
强烈的行动。当然，我们
It signals our desire to
还要有
advance free trade. Of course, when we are advancing trade, we need a peaceful international
中东国家
condition.
南海
China is willing to safeguard the security and peace of South China Sea together with ASEAN countries.
努力
Together with relating countries, we have made efforts in this end.
近20年，
The COC of South China Sea
现在南海
has guaranteed the basic safety and security of South China Sea. We need to seize this opportunity
行为准则
to advance the COC of the South China Sea. As in real terms,
是中国和东盟国家
this
自主发起
code of conduct
参与。
is initiated by China and Southeast Asian
现
countries.
在已经形成了单一的。
This rule has been formed.
什么叫单一文化？这不是一个仅仅是个专业的
A to be discussed text.
南海，中国
It is not in a professional level,
在维护南海
and it indicates
和平稳定、飞跃和航行自由
in the process of safeguarding the safety and security of the South China
我们
Sea.
将宣布由
This year, we will announce
东亚领导人主席国来宣布，明年要进行一读。中方希望3年内
that
完成
China hopes
COC
in a process of 3 years,
使它能够
the negotiation talks will be all concluded
维系南海持久的和平。
to maintain the lasting peace and stability of the South China Sea. In this
会
process,
受益于中国，受益于中国和是会让中国和东盟受益，也会有利于
China and the ASEAN countries will be benefited.
有利于主办方。大家也都
Free
很
trade will
关
also
心，
benefit the host.
在这样一
I
个
know that you are all concerned
中国
about under these circumstances,
对国际的态度，
what's the attitude of China towards the international community.
我在这里再次说明，中国将坚
Here,
定
I
不
will
移地
reiterate again.
和平发展道路。
China will unswervingly stick to the peaceful development path.
己所不欲，勿施于人的理念，是
Peace
深
is the utmost mission of China.
现在不会，也不愿意称霸、搞扩张。
We will not, and we would not like to,
我们希望和我们的邻居
be a major and bullying power in the international community.
共同受益。中国有一句话
We hope to benefit from this together with our neighbors.
当然，我们也希望
China has a saying,
发展的机遇。
distant relatives are not as good as neighbors.
大家都很关心中国的
I know that you all care about
40年
China's
改革开放
development.
的确取得了令世人瞩目的
The 40 years of opening up and reform policy has achieved
我们解决了
greatly.
温饱。
We have addressed the basic issue
中国一些沿
of
海
food and shelter.
现在和近
Coastal areas in China is advancing in modernization.
有人也在问，
Some people are asking,
发展起来 是不是占了什么便宜？
Are you taking advantages of us when you're developed? Here, I want to solemnly tell you all,
是中
the
国
stage of China's development
苦干实干干出来的，
is
可以
a
说
result of Chinese people's hard working
筚路蓝
for 40 years.
千辛万苦，有了今天这样的
Chinese people has gone through challenges and arduous tasks.
不久前，我去过中国中部的一家
Before long,
外资的电
I
子
was
产
in a
品
foreign invested
那个厂房比今天在这
company, and I was in the factory of an electronic processing
做
factory.
中国的工人，主要是农民工。和
The
今天
Chinese
在这
workers sitting inside these factories are mainly migrant workers.
中间甚至没有见过。
Their distance
在那个房间
are
里面
just like yours.
肩并肩
Thousands of people are in the factory
操作。
working tirelessly and operating.
当时陪我的外方外方负责人问我，
The foreign leader in that company
我看到这样的五味杂陈，但是
was addressed by me.
我们只
I told him that I felt complicated inside me, seeing this situation for Chinese people. But we are still a developing country. We need our hard working and diligence to attain the fortune that we deserve. Of course, there are people asking,
世界经济总量第二位，你们还是发展中国家吗？
China is the second largest economy in the world.
所有
Are you still a developing country?
中国都是可发展的。我们的人均
Regarding all international
GDP
norms and standards, we are a developing country.
均的8%，更不要说远远低于。
Our GDP accounts for 80%
当然，
of the world.
有个很特殊的现象，在人类历史上可能没有发生过。
Not surpassing
经
Singapore.
济总量在世界第二个国家，它依然是一个发展中的国家，它的人均水平在世
The
界
second largest economy remains a developing country,
有的时候难以理解。
and the per capita income is only the average. Some people find it hard to understand.
人口众多的国家，
China is a populous country.
也讲了中国面临着诸多的难题。
As our host addressed the difficulties and challenges that China faces,
国际责任既要解决自身
and
的
China needs to shoulder its due responsibility in the international community and face and address its own development
国
issues
际气候变化，
and cope with international
我觉得应对气候变化。
challenges such as the climate change.
所以我认为呀，要客观的看
Therefore, I deem
中
we
国
need to treat China objectively
把发展看成是解决中国一切问题的根本。
China views development as the solution to everything.
中国把自己的事情办好了，对世界
China will do right by itself. And then it's a huge contribution to the world as well as mankind.
发展的机遇。这里我还想
We will take the opportunities of development in the world. Here, I want to address another issue.
东北
I was in the northeastern part of China,
许多农民工
and I saw
在建业，
migrant workers operating in construction sites.
一位接近60岁的
I saw a man nearing his 60s.
经济是简朴，
His clothes
还有
or shabby,
我就问他，
with patches and holes.
你来了以后
I asked him,
到这个大城市看，他说11个月了，他们
have you been to big cities since you're here?
他和他的同事们、工友们要求加班。
He and his colleagues had to work overtime.
我就告诉企业的负责人，我说你们要遵守劳动法。
I told the leader
那
that
负责人说，
you have to abide by the labor
他
law,
们会积极的向我
and he responded,
诉求，要求加班。我就问这名工人，
there is nothing I can do. They all appealed to me about overtime because they needed more money to support
他每年要为他付1到2万的
his son.
学费和生活。
His son just got into a West university in China, and there are 20,000 tuition. There are 20,000 RMBs tuition every year, so he had to work overtime in order to earn the bread for the family.
起了巨大的作用。以前你们说叫人口红利，现在我们可以说人力资源在起作用。我们已经从改革开放前，当时平
From
均受教育
before reform and opening
到
up,
5年，或者说5年多一点，
the average educated years for is less than 5 years,
发展成大。
but now the figure has turned into 10 years.
报告上看，还没有超过10年。何况我们的新增劳动力，现在受教育的年限是
From the report, it is not even 10 years.
这是
But for the newly added workforce in China, the average number it's 13 years.
当然你们要放心，
Chinese people's diligence and hard working will support the development of China.
追求和平的，是希望和我们
We
的
seek for peace
邻居们共享发展机遇。
and we want common development together with our neighbors.
面临一些困难，我们
Currently, Chinese economy is indeed facing some challenges.
运行保持在合理区间，但是也的确
We can keep it in a reasonable range,
放缓稳中有优的情况。
but we are seeking progress in stability.
其小幅波动的可能性，或者说
However, the small fluctuation possibility of China's economy exists.
会是下滑。
The fundamentals for long-term development
诞生的
is looking
1.8
upward.
万户新开办企业。去年年底，我们的市场主体已经超过1亿户。你们可以想象，他们有
We have 18,000
能量，他们不仅
new businesses every day.
也在推动
Not only did they create fortune,
潜力的挖掘。
but also they're advancing the potential of the market.
双十一节
Recently, we have a festival called the Double 11.
网上消费，其实也带动了实体店的消费。
E-commerce actually push forward for the real stores sales.
是
The sales volume of that day
2100多元人民币，而去
reaches up to 21 billion RMB.
1000
Last year,
或者是600多元。
the figure was 15 billion RMB.
但是可以断定
These figures are not
市场的消费
really exact,
巨大。
but it indicates the potential of consumption in Chinese market is huge and unlimited.
中国政府
The wisdom and diligence of
深刻地
people
感受到
are proved.
改革开放
The Chinese government and people can
创
feel
造了发挥
reform and opening up has created
条件，我们会进一步
opportunities
推动
and conditions for them
开放
to be innovative.
向外企、向
We will engage wider openness
各类所有
for all enterprises.
放宽市场的
and institutions.
同时，我们要减政、减税、
At the same time, we will
减费，
streamline the administration and reduce tax
能够
values
激发市场的活力，使他们
to more and further
一视同仁的
stimulate the power and vitality of the market, and we treat everybody with the same manner.
就采取大
We will not
措施。我们会相继的
take a measure that one cuts fits all because of new downturn pressure in our economy.
我们是有底气的。当然，
We will stimulate the vitality of the market
公平的阶段，让他们有一个
and enhance fair and just supervision,
营商环境。
enhance the rule of
假
law,
冒伪劣、坑蒙拐骗、侵犯知识产权，要坚决的、毫不留情的加以
and crack down harshly on those copycats that infringe the property rights.
消费者得到他们应该得到
Therefore,
公正的
giving consumers what they deserve, a fair treat.
不会停，门会越开的。中国的改革
China's openness will not stop. Our doors will open even wider.
实现现代化，虽然这个路有很长的时间要走，
The policy of reform and opening up
中伴随着它的
still have a long way to go, but it will
了解到
be along the way with us all the time.
参加业务会议，尤其是业务之前有很多新加坡的有关人士
Yesterday, before the banquet,
文化界
personnel from Singapore in various areas have communicated and exchanged their views, and I noticed
相当的紧密。我们之间
the Singapore cooperation with China is relatively close and tight.
巨大机遇，这也是
We are each other's opportunity for development as well as prosperity.
中新自贸区升级版和对接
This time, I am in Singapore to witness the synergy of intelligent cities
人员智力的培训等等诸方面，
and personnel intellectual training, as well as the establishment of free trade zone.
我的硕果感到高兴，也为未来中
I
美
am
关系
pleased and glad about the results
会取得
between
更大程度
China and Singapore's cooperation, and I believe there will be
相信
even greater achievements between us.
有自己的发展时期。中国
I believe
一带一路和新加坡
China has its own path in development, and the Road and Belt Initiative will have energy with Singapore as well.
三方合作，几大平台都可以支撑中国和新加坡合作的深度。
China and Singapore's cooperation will be supported by all projects
有利于地区，
done by
有
us,
利于世界。谢谢大家。
beneficial to cooperation, to our countries as well as the world. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Premier Li Keqiang has agreed to take a few questions. Perhaps we can invite some questions. Maybe I call upon Mr. Li Yishan, Chairman of Business China.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, for allowing me to ask the first question. Your Excellency, Premier Li Keqiang, Singapore's and China's relationship can be characterized by one that is broad, deep, and growing. And throughout the last 40 years, as you have mentioned in your speech, we have undertaken many significant projects, almost at every milestone, every 10 years, every significant project. And I like to believe that apart from our sharing of many common interests, strategic interests, our relationship is also built upon high mutual trust and personal friendship among our leaders. May I ask you, Your Excellency, how do you see this mutual trust and personal friendship can be further enhanced in the coming years, especially among our younger leaders? Thank you.
I fully agree with what you just said, that between Singapore and China, there is a high degree of mutual trust. In my speech, I elaborated on the achievements in our practical cooperation. I look forward to more frequent meetings between the leaders of Singapore and China to enhance the personal friendship. And I also hope that there will be more heart-to-heart communication among people of all walks of life in our two countries. Looking ahead, indeed, hope lies in the young population of our two countries. And I believe that exchanges between these young people will carry forward the traditional friendship created by the elderly generations of our two countries. I have come here to enhance cooperation with Singapore, and one important area is our knowledge, including personnel training and the internship exchanges. China is open in this area. We welcome more young people from Singapore to be interns in China, and we encourage more Chinese students to take up internships in Singapore. Of course, we will urge them to abide by the rules and laws in Singapore. And I have a firm belief in a strong mutual understanding between people of our two countries. Thank you.
Perhaps I can invite one of our younger people to ask a question from Premier Li.
那么下面就请我们的年轻人来问一个问题。
Yes, please. Maybe you introduce yourself.
With Business China, I'm a student from National University of Singapore. We know that China has made a lot of progress in knowledge innovation, in particular in such sectors as AI, drones, robotics, and big data. China has been the leader in some sense. So my question is about what role the young students of Singapore and other Southeast Asian countries can play in the development of such sectors. Thank you. Well, as I remember, during my talks with Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong yesterday, the very first topic was about smart city partnership. And that represents the progress of human civilizations, the new industrial and technological revolutions, in particular in such sectors as IT and robotics. China and Singapore have reached principal agreement on the pilot cooperation of smart city partnerships. And that, I believe, will provide broad platforms for cooperation among the scientific and technological sectors and the young people. And we look forward to cooperation with Singapore in high-tech in a comprehensive way. And again, the future of high-tech lies in the young people, as represented by the girl who just raised the question. Thank you.
Heng Chi, you seem very keen to ask a question. Please go ahead and also identify yourself.
Your Excellency, I am Chan Heng Chi, and I'm from the Singapore University of Technology and Design. I was Singapore's ambassador to the United States previously. My question is on US-China relations. Now, Deputy Prime Minister Teo has said that the US-China relationship is a very important relationship. It is, of course, the most consequential relationship of the 21st century. But it is not in a good place now. What is the cause of the friction? Is it just trade? Well, how do you see the way forward?
Well, I did not mention China-US relations in my speech. It's not that I want to neglect this relationship. It's that I can tell someone will ask this question given the importance of the relationship. Now, since China and the United States established diplomatic ties, our relationship has had its share of ups and downs. Nevertheless, on the whole, China-US relationship has had stable development. The United States, the biggest developed country in the world, and China, the biggest developing country in the world, have much to offer each other. The stable development and sound progress of such a pair of relationship benefits both countries and the larger world. Otherwise, it will affect the whole world. Well, China and the United States see each other as development opportunities. Economic cooperation and trade has always been an anchor in the overall China-US relationship. Now, trade has been a prominent issue in the relationship, and we hope that negotiations will be carried out on the basis of mutual respect, balance, mutual benefit, and good faith, so that a solution can be found acceptable to both sides. There is no winner in any trade war, and we have confidence in the wisdom of the Chinese and American people. As long as our two countries uphold sincerity, we will be able to find a mutually acceptable solution. Given the broad common interests between China and the US and the stakes of many other countries in it, and given that all countries are linked in the same industrial chain in the world today, and China and the United States an important part in it, nobody wants to disrupt such a good momentum. Now, you also asked about whether this is just about trade. Let me say that as long as we uphold equality in our dialogue, we will be able to manage differences and disagreements. And by such efforts, we will expand our common interests, and that will benefit China, the US, and the world beyond. And as long as we respect each other's core interests and major concerns, there will be ways that we will manage and even resolve these disagreements.
Premier Li has agreed to take one more question.
最后一个问题。
Perhaps I give a chance to someone on this side. And
Premier Li, in your article published in the South China Morning Post yesterday, you said that opening up underpins the development and success of both China and Singapore, and that opening up is not just a means to an end, but a tenet in its own right. So my question is there any room for more development regarding economic and trade, given the broader global context between China and ASEAN, not just FTA or the RCEP just mentioned? To establish and develop an open economy and integrate China's economy even more deeply into the global economy represents the direction of our development and China's conviction and concrete actions to uphold multilateralism and free trade. China and ASEAN are connected by the same mountains and sea, and we are each other's important partners for trade and two-way investment. Indeed, there is more room for development in free trade and investment facilitation. On China's part, we will take our initiative to pursue greater opening up, in particular in the services sector, in which Singapore has a strong competitive edge. And China will continue to pursue greater opening up in basic industries and invite more foreign investment. Actually, some European and American companies have already agreed on some petrochemical projects for sole ownership. And such a process represents new opportunities for the development of both countries. We hope that China-ASEAN Upgrade FTA signed last year will take effect very soon, as most of the countries have completed their domestic procedures, so that we will promote a high standard and more free trade in line with WTO rules. And I would be remiss if I don't mention the business environment in China and how to promote two-way investment in this arena. Now, China is the second largest FDI destination in the world. Singapore is China's second biggest source of FDI and the biggest source in terms of FDI growth in China. Well, I believe I have answered all the concerns of many Singaporean friends, but for me, I have only one request for our Singaporean friends, that is more investment to China. Now, if any of you ever encounter any unfair treatment when investing in China or any unfair treatment in the business environment, feel free to contact any of the ministers present today here and even directly to me.
谢谢大家。
Thank you.
We are waiting for your more investment in China.
谢谢李克强总理。We would like to thank Premier Li for his clear and confident exposition of China's aspirations for the Chinese people, for China's development pathway, for China's relationship with the US, the region, and the world. Today's Singapore lecture by Prime Minister Li Keqiang will help to promote mutual understanding, mutual respect, and mutual benefit for our region, for the world, for the peaceful development of all our countries. Let us thank Premier Li Keqiang. 感谢李克强总理。
Thank you.
Thank you, Premier Li Keqiang, and thank you, DPMTO, sir. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as a token of our appreciation, Mr. M. Rajaram, member of the ISEAS Board of Trustees, and Ms. Din Beiling, Chief Executive Officer of Business China, will now present Premier Li Keqiang with a pottery piece crafted by one of Singapore's foremost potters, Mr. Chua Soo Kim. It is entitled Network, Belt and Road. The pottery piece was inspired by the Silk Road and the connectivity to the rest of the world. Your Excellency, Premier Li Keqiang, DPMTO, Mr. Rajaram, and Ms. Din, may I request that we commemorate this special occasion with a photo. Thank you, Premier Li Keqiang. Thank you, DPMTO. Thank you, Mr. Rajaram and Ms. Din. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the 44th Singapore lecture. Please remain in your seats while Premier Li, PM Lee Hsien Loong, and Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean take their leave.